Hey, good morning, everybody, and want to welcome you to this special edition of Grinders Live. Of course, being, I don't want to say the hub of the community of daily fantasy sports, but so many players here come to our site. I'm really appreciative to be able to get Jason Robbins of DraftKings on because, of course, a rough weekend for them over there on their site with some site outages and basically getting the details, from the people involved themselves rather than making assumptions. So, Jason, appreciate you spending some time with us and kind of bringing to light exactly, what happened this weekend.
Thanks for having me, and just wanted to apologize to everyone out there for the outage. It was certainly not to our standard, and feel terrible about it. And really disappointed, and we are doing everything to make sure that it will not happen ever again.
Yeah, and take us through exactly that morning. When did you guys start getting indications that there were issues, and kind of go through when this process began, I guess, of the site having issues on Sunday morning?
So, somewhere around 11:30, we started to see some slowdowns and heard some complaints from people, and around, somewhere between 11:30 and 12, the site went out. We were actually able to get it back up around 12:15, and it stayed up until 1 o'clock kickoff, which was great because I think that avoided a lot of people who maybe would have. I know still a lot of people were affected, but I think that helped maybe with some of those that might have been affected and were able to get their edits in, and that was fortunate that we were able to do that. But shortly after the 1 p.m. kickoff, it went down again, and as it turned out, there were about there were a million different things that could have been, but there were terrific issues, and both of them had been introduced as they were bugs in the code that had been introduced in our recent code deploy, and totally unrelated things. So when we fixed the first one, which was what caused the outage in the morning, we thought that we were out of the woods, and then it was surprising to us to see it go down again. Our first instinct was that it was something related to the first issue. So we spent a lot of time digging there and trying to figure out why what we had thought we'd put in place to fix it didn't. And as it turned out, that wasn't the case. It wasn't that first issue. It was something totally different. And unfortunately, both did not show up until the site was under pretty heavy traffic. And that for us was something that we should have been able to catch but didn't. And we are putting a lot of measures in place to amp up the testing that we do and make sure that even under more loads than we thought, bugs that we wouldn't expect to show up in lighter loads would still be caught during testing.
Was this issue related to having an excessive number of people on the site than you've ever had before? I don't know if that was the case, but it was very prominent, a $100,000 free roll you guys were running on Sunday, and you look at the number of unique users that you had on the site entering that tournament, and it was a crazy number of people. Did that cause this issue, or is that totally separate?
This wasn't really an issue of that. We've certainly had a great day as far as the number of people in the game and on the site, but this wasn't our biggest day ever, and it wasn't an issue of the size, the amount of the traffic. It was a bug, unfortunately, that didn't show up until there was heavy traffic, but this would have happened if we had introduced this bug a week or 2 weeks ago, and it was unfortunate that it happened the same timing as the free roll, because that was something we were looking forward to having everybody enjoy, and it hurt the experience, but it really wasn't related to that.
Let's talk about after 1 o'clock now, the second kind of bug hits, and DraftKings is really unique in that you guys do offer late swap, and the fact that people can make adjustments to their lineups, after the first game started, and it kind of puts you guys in a more difficult decision process in terms of how to kind of deal with this outage. At what point do you guys have to make good on different entries? Was this a situation where you guys really thought you were going to be able to get it back up and it was going to only be maybe 30 minutes or so, an hour tops? Because I think a lot of us were just left in the dark on exactly what was going on at that period of time where we couldn't really access the site well, live scoring was lagging. What was your feeling like when this was going on? Did you guys think you kind of it wasn't going to be as long as it was?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, we thought it was something related to that first bug we caught. So, the whole time I thought this was going to be something that's 15, 20 minutes max, and as they dug in more, it was more and more puzzling, and obviously at a certain point we started to realize it was going to be longer than we thought, but it was surprising to us. I thought it was going to be a faster fix, given that we'd already had something that occurred earlier in the morning, and we thought that it must be related to that.
I think that a lot of people, including myself, I don't think all of us understand that bugs happen in this kind of world that we live in this type of gaming system. You're not the first site for it to happen to. You won't be the last site for it to happen to. But I think some of the criticism people have had, myself included, is some of the communication you guys had or maybe didn't have with some of the players throughout this point in time. If you could go back, I mean, would you guys have been a little bit more, I don't know, I don't say upfront, but, just kind of ahead of everything? Because, like I said, a lot of us were in the dark during this time, not knowing how you guys were going to handle this whole situation. So do you guys have any regrets on that front?
Well, I think these are always really, really hard situations to handle. You're not prepared for a sudden 10, 20, 30, 100x the amount of inbound email and support requests that you get, and it's just hard to do that while meanwhile you're also focused on trying to fix the technical issue, because the most important thing is to make sure that the site gets up and I think, could we have done a better job? Yes, but I also think that we were pretty consistent in what we asked people to do, which was to email support if they experienced an issue, and we would look at what happened to them and make right if it were something that related to it. And we've always tried to handle all of our customer service that way. Everything, we try not to have these. I think when you do a blanket approach, unless it's just give everybody on the site money, which I think most people would understand that if you refund the 95+% of people who didn't even have an issue, it's very costly for a website and for a company to do. And you saw earlier in the year the same people calling when FanDuel had their issue, and it's, having been on this side of it, practical. Most people didn't experience anything. They set their lineups way before and didn't check their scores until way after. But at the same time, we do want to make sure that anyone who had even the slightest issue with being able to get the right contests that they wanted to enter, with being able to get the right players in their lineups, being able to do their swaps. Anyone who had an issue there, we feel it was our fault. It was our fault they had that issue, and they're entitled to be able to not have to take the loss for that. That's our fault. So we really tried to take an approach where we said, look, if you were somebody who this was just like a normal day for you at DraftKings and it didn't really affect the outcome of your contest and who you would have played, that's great. We're happy for that, and we're happy that we didn't have that kind of negative impact there. And for anyone who did see a negative impact, who did feel like they didn't get the right players in or didn't get to review their lineup in time, and maybe they would have made a late swap, I don't know. We asked all those people to email in and tell us about that. And along the way, some of those email responses got posted in the forums, and it was assumed that one person's response applied to everybody, but that was really never our goal. Our goal was to say, listen, reach out if you have a problem, and we'll make sure we take care of you.
Well, I think that was a big part of the problem that kind of took place. Is there was suddenly this word being spread that the entire site was going to be free rolled, and honestly, like you mentioned, that really didn't seem like a realistic outcome. But the wording of that email that was out there, I could easily see why somebody would have kind of felt that it would apply to the entire site, just the way it was said. The term "all entries," will be refunded instead of "your entries," and I think that was a little bit misleading. But the part that really I think caused the problem was after it kind of word started to spread, and I'm sure you guys had so many people on this monitoring everything that's going on. That email kind of hung out there, and it hung out there on Twitter for at least over an hour before anybody kind of came in and squashed it and said, hey, this isn't what's going on. And I think that kind of led to that we had on Sunday afternoon into the evening.
Well, I mean, I I'm not sure. I think that there were definitely people who jumped in, including, Fatal Error, and said, please email us if you have an issue. There was just a lot going on in that thread, and even at the top of the thread in bold letters, it was stickied by the mods at RotoGrinders that they should contact support if somebody has an issue. We then set a cutoff because you realize at some point we have to cut it off when the Twitter world and RotoGrinders forums explode and everyone, network effect travels, then virtually everybody, if we don't cut it off at some point, could come and say, oh, I had an issue, give me a refund. So we tried to cut it off initially during the halftime, at the halftime of the late game and on Sunday, and people rightfully so said, look, it's been a lot going on today, I've been out, I didn't have time. So we said fine. So we set a new cutoff for 8 p.m. the following night, and it was just our feeling at that point that if after 30 plus hours after the issue you experienced happened, if you hadn't heard that you needed to email yet, we tried in a lot of ways. And even after that, I would still say now that if someone legitimately feels like they were wronged here, that they did not know they were going to make a swap, which is different than, hey, I thought it was free roll Sunday and I'm disappointed it's not, right? That's something that's got to be, you guys got to understand is not fair to the site to say, oh, somebody posted an email and there was a misinterpretation, so now you owe us all money. But that's very different for me than if somebody legitimately feels like they had a misunderstanding, they were wronged, they weren't able to. That's something we're always going to try to take care of, and that's just a different case. And the hard thing is, how do you parse through it? So we've tried to engage in a dialogue with people. We've said, all right, talk to us about your specific situation. But I do hope people understand that our goal is that. Our goal is to try to take anyone who had a real issue and make it right. In cases where we either have asked extra questions or we haven't been able to, which is a different approach than applying a blanket policy. We had a discussion on that, and we said, look, we feel like we could do that, and that's eventually when we set a cutoff for this, we may have to, but our goal as a company has always been to be able to provide service to people in a way that's personalized and addresses what their specific issue was. And we want to strive to say that if anyone really did have an issue, we're going to take care of them, and if it's somebody who didn't, that hopefully they'll understand that we are really just doing our best to try to get the service to the people who legitimately did have a problem.
Yeah, and there's no question the resolution is beyond fair. I mean, you guys are going to eat a lot of money on this. And how is that going right now? I know I've talked to some people, and they said they've had a delay in just the payouts of their games, regular games. How is the make good going to work for those people who contacted support and get their entries refunded in which they did not cash?
So I mean, basically, we looked at it as if you had an issue with any of your entries, you got a free roll for us on the day. If you made more money than you entered, you can keep it. We're not going to ask for money back, even though I know that was something that others there was question on whether we should apply a similar policy to FanDuel. We said, all right, you either have to give up your entry or not, but we decided not to do that. So we said, we're not going to do that. We're going to let you ride out your entries, and if you make money on them, great. And if you don't, if you're down for the day, we're going to make you whole. We're going to basically make it as though you didn't lose anything, and we felt like that was the fairest solution. It's going to cost us a ton of money, as I'm sure you know, and it's our fault. So we're accepting that we have to take that loss. But we felt like this was the best and most fair solution for everyone.
There's been a lot of people, I think a tad bit unfairly because we don't know the specs of it, but felt that you guys weren't prepared for this and were surprised after what took place week 2 at FanDuel. Obviously, everybody followed that very closely. What do you say to those people who are like, you guys didn't have a plan in place? Is that accurate, or did you guys have a plan in place?
Oh, we absolutely had a plan in place. I mean, as soon as we saw the FanDuel issue, we went back and double and triple checked that plan, make sure it was intact and ready. And what I will say is that no matter how good a plan you have in place, it's hard to do when it actually happens because you're just not set up for when suddenly you get 20, 30, 40x the amount of email that you were getting before, and your tech team's trying to resolve something and they think they've had it and they haven't. You try to manage through it as best as you can, but The reason that we were able to even get to most people's responses and people were even getting emails is because we had a plan to be able to pull additional staffing in and get that done quickly. But there's always a gap in time between when you realize that you need to do that and you can get everybody there. It's not like the entire team is on call on Sunday and able to, at the drop of a hat, move. But certainly, you know, once we all saw that was going on, we were able to get the additional staffing up. It took us about an hour or so, and then we were really executing the plan from there on out.
Final couple things here before we let you go. Certainly appreciate you jumping on and kind of shedding some light on exactly, you know, what took place this weekend. And, you know, take us through a little bit in the final kind of outcome for this. I mean, moving forward, we've seen it with FanDuel after they had their issue week 2. It really did not have a whole giant effect on their site moving forward, and I expect the same thing kind of take place here with you guys. I mean, what measures are you guys now putting in place? You mentioned them, but how are you? I mean, it's impossible to ensure anything, but how can you make, you know, the users feel that much more comfortable now that this isn't going to happen again over at DraftKings?
Well, this particular issue has been caught, so it won't happen again. And as far as whether something else will come up, I mean, I don't know. It'd be foolish of me to promise. There is zero chance that could happen. But what I would point to is our track record. If you look, this is the first real major technology issue we've ever had in our history, and I think that, you know, that's something that we've usually been recognized as standing out in the industry with. That we've been able to have a differentially strong performing site and no downtime, and we've been able to do that and still release lots of new features and apps and things at the same time, so we haven't had to sacrifice on that end. You know, I think as things go forward and the stakes get higher, obviously people need to continue to demand perfect performance out of the websites that they visit where there's lots of money trading hands, and that's what we strive for. We want zero downtime. So, you know, this particular issue has been caught. And I can tell you that we will only raise the bar from here as far as being able to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again.
I know people are going to be curious of this, and I'm sure you don't even know yet, but could you ballpark about how much this might cost DraftKings?
A lot. I mean, you know, I don't know yet because, but you know, $500,000 easy, maybe $1 million. When all is said and done, it's hard to give an exact number, but it'll probably be somewhere in that range.
And it's got to be so frustrating to you for the time, like you said, the timing of it, in terms of all the acquisition you bring in. And say this much, the support conversations I've had with you guys over this time was absolutely immediate and quick. So I really want to give you and your team a ton of credit with that. I think, again, my only criticism is maybe next time just having a little bit more awareness out there with the users, whether it's banners on the site or really, I mean, I don't even know if you need to do a site-wide email, but I just felt like the communication could have been just a little bit better on what took place this weekend. So if there's one thing to learn from that, from my perspective, I think that was it. But Jason,
well, Dan, it would not be a conversation with you if you didn't have some good feedback for me. So
I always appreciate that. You know, I try to help. That's what I'm here to do.
No, you do, and I think your comments are always solid. What I'd say is, you know, just ask everybody to understand we're doing the best we can, and that really our goal has been and will continue to be to try to make everybody feel like, while I can't necessarily go back and make every step of the process perfect, that by the end everybody feels like the situation was handled fairly, and if you had an issue that you were made whole, and that's really the goal for us. So hopefully when it's all done, everyone feels that way, and then we will all go back to enjoying daily fantasy, and hopefully we'll not have to have a conversation like this again.
Yeah, I don't like these early morning, midweek interviews at all, believe me. I don't. I don't want to ever have these again with you or Nigel or Tom or anybody out there. This is not good for the industry in general, but you know what? Like I say, you learn from the mistakes. Hopefully you move forward, you get bigger, and they don't happen again. And if they do, you know, you at least have, I guess, to say that experience under your belt and looking back at what you did right and maybe what you did wrong. So, but Jason, again, I really appreciate your candor here on the Grinders Live here with us. And again, DraftKings has a ton of big things going on. You guys just kind of like silently like threw in this huge end of year, multi-million-dollar every single week thing at the end of this past week. So you guys are continuing to move forward, and Millionaire Maker is back again once this week. So and again, if you have any issues whatsoever, as Jason said, always contact support. That's the one thing we've learned as players from this. If you have issues, don't go to the RG forums, don't go to Twitter, go to support@DraftKings.com and let them know what your problem is. They can help you a heck of a lot more than random guy on Twitter is going to. So I promise you that. Jason, thank you so much again for your time, and good luck moving forward. See you out in Atlantis in a couple weeks.
Thanks for having me.